Okay. I have no idea why Twitch always shows unstable for the first like 20 minutes of the stream. The bitrate barely changes. Huh. Okay. I think everything's up and running. Over here a little bit more because the sun. Morning, daughter. How you doing? How's things today? Pretty good. Running out of steam on my event storming stuff. Probably run it by Ted one more time. Nice. Just because you've done so much. You I think that's also a process that is really hard to do alone. Like I think using GPT was a great idea because you basically getting that sounding board as such, because I suppose you kind of you created a discussion, but it's where I would imagine that process is a lot more fun. Well, fun varies, but a lot more fun in terms of. I'm still not sure who I'd want to include in the discussion. I mean, to me, that depends. Definitely developers UX, but do you include the business executives? I probably would, because it's discovery, right? At least the product team, the product management team, the team responsible for asking those questions of customers. Having SMEs there would help as well. They might be one and the same, they might not be. I don't think you need people that understand the process. So business executives might not be the best people, depending on if they understand the intricacies. What I've found is executives generally are focused on the end product more. Again, the output, like you said. So they're not, but that doesn't mean they haven't come from that background. So they might actually be, normally they're in that position because they've got the experience. So they might actually work as your subject matter experts rather than business executives at that point. But it's not an engineering task, is it? It's a collaboration and a discovery that is not engineering focused. You shouldn't be trying to solve the technical components at that phase. I mean, you've got it in the back of your head, but you don't need the engineering in there to go through this process. I think that's one of the beauties of it. Like I said, you linked in the chat the other day, right? The big picture process modeling, system design, people experience, and refactoring. So I would imagine system design is you are talking about big picture, yeah. Mm, yeah. I just pushed to it. There were some lingering mistakes. Okay. Yeah, so I was looking through just before the stream. I was going through. You changed the directories around here, and yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I like how you also did personas. Identify key personas. Yeah. Because I mean, all these all these processes, all these things are just aimed at trying to get better. This was actually me copying over refactoring. It is including dispatch systems. Okay, gotcha. We're bad at this stuff. We're quick to jump on a solution, and we're bad at this stuff. The discovery, this answering questions first, because we want to see the output. But you did a fantastic job, right? You've gone through this. You've clearly. I mean, I know that it's not all like, it's not like you hand wrote all this out, right, in every single case. But you still went through this process. You still analyzed the problem. You still did a lot of work to get this output. Yeah. So definitely worth the effort, I think, from the experience perspective. Yeah. Every meeting I'm in, when we're supposed to talk big picture, people always want to talk implementation tests. Hi, Phil Schrammel. Welcome in. Good day. Yeah, that's the issue. We tend to want to get into the weeds quickly. I get reined in on that all the time. Yeah. It's a definite challenge to avoid, and I try to, if I'm leading a team, I try to divert them away from the technical discussion and try and actually encourage them never to mention technical stuff in group meetings, because again, we are very prone to saying, "Oh, that's just," and when you say that's just, what you'll hear is PMs will start saying, "Oh, that's just," because now they are believing that something is easier because they've heard you say it, or they've heard you go through it. And I'm not saying it always is, and it's not about being difficult or being obtuse. Do I mean obtuse? Lazy, lacking quickness of perception or intellect, characterized. No, not obtuse. I don't mean obtuse, but it's maybe, yeah, but it's about making sure that you are controlling the message and understand that, again, that timing thing, right? When we talk about the amount of time it takes to build something, and we are really good at saying, oh yeah, that's just like 2 minutes, but it might not be. So, or there might be other things in the way, and when they hear just, they pick up on it. So avoiding the technical discussion in a group meeting setting it's not being difficult, it's just making sure that the right information is managed at the right time. Someone might say why, what, and the how might be very difficult. I think that's where the tech discussion springs up naturally. It is, but then you got to say, okay, well, hold on. We need to do some investigation there to understand what is involved, right? That's where having people who come from an engineering background in management is always a challenge, because they might be thinking through that solution as well. And what you've got to say is, politely, well, you're not in the current tech stack. You don't understand how we've done things. We don't quite know off the top of our heads right now how things are truly done. So let us go off and figure that out, and we'll get back to you with an answer on time. But again, in these meetings, we shouldn't be discussing time anyway, right? We shouldn't be discussing implementation because it's irrelevant to the process of discovery, right? If you're talking about how do we implement this, then that's a technical discussion. But if we're talking about what do we need to implement, that's not really a technical discussion. That's a requirements gathering session, and that's all it should be. The technical discussion can happen after the fact. So it's more, you've got to solve the problems you need to solve when you need to solve them. And in a group setting, having technical discussion has bitten me more often than it's aided me. In my last group, I had a PM that was basically trying to identify how we should do the work so that he could save some time. He'd go and look at APIs ahead of time and tell us which endpoints needed to be called, so that he could save us that time. It, very well meaning, really trying to help moving us forward, but trying to get the work done quicker by trying to cut some of that time out of, oh, well, you don't need to investigate it now, so now you can just get on with doing it. So, yeah. So I can easily identify, yeah. So, yeah, it's the dev I pair with right now in testing did similar stuff. He got some won't fix while working in QA. Right. He'd find elaborate and fun to find bugs. Not healthy. That would so real happen it wasn't worth fixing. Yeah. Sorry, I just had my monitor to the right flickers every now and then, so I have to unplug and replug in the DisplayPort cable, but that messes with my screens. Yeah, that's not good. Okay. So the purpose of today's stream is to it's always funny when I look back on things and realize at times I am the dysfunction. So the one thing that I've definitely grown into as I've gained experience, got older, is I've definitely grown into the attitude of I'm not doing work I don't need to do, right? Now, I don't take on the normal attitude of I don't like the word veteran, but like old school developer, in that I'm not doing anything else I don't want to do. I'm just doing it my way and there's only that way. But I definitely believe in not overstretching, because I've done that. I've been there. I've overachieved. I've put out pieces of code to help people. I've written applications. I wrote in when I first moved to this country and I was building tools to help people. They didn't really need help, but I built a full help system for the help desk based off XML, so they could add documentation to it and it would actually give them prompts and stuff, right? And they could open up an application and say, okay, here's the problem I have, here's the solution, and it would driven. I just did that in my spare time to help, and they used it. I wrote tools like that all over the place for fixing things, for helping with things, and it got me noticed, but it also created a workload for me that I didn't really want to handle anymore. So I pushed further. I did more helpful things earlier on, but now, companies don't really, they get a lot out of it. They get a lot of productivity when you're kind of helping along, but it's not for the good of you or your growth. It's just adding more workload. And so I these days I don't do anything extra. Unless I'm sure that it's genuinely something that's quick and easy and I don't have to worry about it. I'm not sure the company gets that much added value out of it either, and it's typically not an expectation. Right, it's not an expectation, it's beneficial. And oftentimes it can create a further challenge, especially if people become reliant upon the tooling, because no one maintains it. And our CEO is very technical, so he loves going into talking SQL indexes and other technical minutiae. Yeah, in those meetings, you're going to end up with, if you get technical people, you've got to kind of avoid it. But that's their chance. They think they're around friends, so therefore it's a good time to talk. And it's hard to focus someone who is your boss. So yeah. Unfortunately for him, his company is quite successful, so he don't get to do what he loves. Yeah. Like, I'm building this. I want to build a product, right? I'm focused on, I really want to build this out, right? Sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on the dogs. They're in playful mode, it seems. But what happens if this becomes a product? What happens if this becomes, like, it takes off and all of a sudden I'm a boss and not a developer? Can I let go? Would I let go? Something you don't think about when you're building something like this, right? Or are you building any software? Like, what happens if? Like, because if you think about it, if I've put thousands of hours, I mean, I've already put, well, this has been going for 9 months. I've put at least 10 to 12 hours a week in, right? I've still put a lot of work into this. I'll see if a certain count, but you should either hire a CEO or let go of the technical stuff. But the issue is, right, the software has to evolve. As someone who's gone out of that step and, comes back, let's say I step away and 6 months later, the technology's changed. We've got some new processes, improvements, etc. I still apply my way of thinking to that. And I say, oh, we're going to do this. Well, do I get to, because I'm the boss, do I get to say, yeah, we have to do that? Right. So you have to have someone who's willing to listen to the experts, the current system developers as well. And that would be a challenge. Right. Yeah. So, it's, if he had a CEO, I think he would, the 3 months and the new CEO is fired for not doing what he wants. Right. So you end up with, well, you're not doing what I'd expect you to do in your job now because I had a different vision. The software, they've interfered with the software because now they have expectations of how the software should work, and it doesn't. And, to me, it sounds weird. This is my baby. This is something I've put a lot of time into. I'm invested in doing this. Thank you for the look, Sully. Good day. So it's challenging, and I get why it's hard to let go of, especially when your past decisions are being questioned. Maybe someone comes in and goes, "Oh, well, this method of these APIs, I don't like these. We need to change these," and they've got control of the software now. Like, you hire people and then they do their own thing because it is putting their own, oh no, the dogs are jumping around the living room. They put their own stamp on it. No, no, you have to let go, and I've got to imagine that is the hardest thing in the world to do if you've built software, especially if you've given a good chunk of your life to and personal time to building it. Speaking of which, so attitudes towards, yeah. Well, I think that's where it's good for people who have come from a technical background that no longer have engagement to be given side projects or to be given research projects and stuff. I mean, it's kind of like, here's some busy work, but maybe they go off and do some prototyping. Maybe they go off and create a technical team and that they lead and kind of promote to the rest of the team. Knowing the technical side is a strength, not a weakness. It is, but you also have to keep up with it. That's the challenge. I think this is what prevents many companies to grow. The CEO founder can't let go, but also can't change their ways, right? Because your skill set, consider the way that technology is evolving. Go back a year. AI is not a big thing. Well, it is a big thing, but it's not like all of a sudden an emergent thing. Go forward 6 months, it's a massively emergent thing with all these things happening and all these changes happening. If you've stepped away from the day-to-day technology, you're out of the loop within 6 months. So if you're out of there for 2-3 years while the company's building, and then you jump back in, the technology is advanced at a crazy pace. So there's new tools, new libraries, new frameworks available that the team is using, the team is adapting to, or they're not, and because you won't let it happen. But you don't have the time to go off and research everything else like that. So you've got to let go enough. So I remember at another place we got yelled at for spending $50 on something the CEO thought was unnecessary. Yeah, if all decision has to go through CEO, including technical ones. It's funny, Dad was a bank manager at a very small branch in Nova Scotia. I figured if he had wanted to, he would have ridden out his career there, except we looked to the branch now and there's no bank manager there anymore. Yeah, the world does change, and yeah. I mean, I've been guilty of it. I've looked at, people who have previously had a technical background and they say something, you're like, do you even know how this stuff works? But they just don't have that time to sit down and learn that stuff anymore. The branch doesn't need a bank manager, not enough loans, business to justify it. Yeah, that's scary. But like, things just change, things go away. If the CEO thinks the company incomes and outcomes is coming out of their own pocket, they will go through every invoice and hunt down very small costs, but miss the big opportunities. Yeah. I need to be right back. I've got a dog crying. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I'm back. Sorry, just reading back because I can't read up on the prompter. But yeah, you guys have been come and say. They've used AI for business plans now. So obviously it's going well. I mean, I don't envy people being in that position of having to try and grow a company, because you get to a certain size, I would imagine, and it's how do you go beyond where you are? Again, if you're building a niche tool, then you've got a limited market. Like for this, if I build this out and I do what I want to do with this, then there is really no, as long as it progresses and updates, etc. That's Atlassian. 42.38 billion market cap. So and that's significantly dropped today over the past 6 months. So yeah. Yeah. Well, you understand this stuff more than I do. But either way, they're still a big company. It's a big component. But yeah. So lots of cash available is really what that's saying. Cool. The WeWork story is fascinating. Basically, it was an idea that had already been tried and was considered not good, but add an app to it and see how got the look, and you can raise billions. Yeah, yeah. But again, you've got to hit a point where the business is struggling to grow, and you got to have the right people involved, and that's when it get. I mean, I've been at several companies that have been they've been in a place and they've wanted to go further, and then they're pushing in different directions. And trying to progress, and it's hard. Like, as much as I dream that I would build a piece of software one day, that stuff is the reality. Like, even if I build this and it becomes a thing, and it takes off, what happens next? Right? Yeah. 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 I've seen that. Yeah. And it works, right? Okay, so let me how are you going to work now? That doesn't change either. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out the bugs that are in the screen. But how are you supposed to ever make money on short-term rentals, no matter how many beer tabs? So on the topic of software, on building software of the things that happen, obviously identified yesterday, I've got several quirks or bugs with this software. Quirks, I'm gonna label them as quirks because right now they're not actual bugs, because they're not actually things I understand whether they actually are working correctly and I'm just missing the data. But there's some expectation. So yeah, we'll say requirements, but so these fields here directly affect the data here, right? So if I assign this user, right, I expect this user to populate, right? But there's other update process things that are not working the way I would expect. So, because I want to do this live update thing, right? So what I'm trying to figure out is I need to tighten this process up. I need to make sure I understand this process and that I'm updating the right thing. So the way these work is these are separate components and they have separate stores. Well, they have the same store, the same data store underneath. And I'm pretty sure of that because if I change, if we change, are you going to work now to you are going to work now, it changes there. So they are the same store with the underlying data. The signals are firing and things are working. So to me, this is an educational problem, not an actual bug. This is me not understanding some eventing or some sort of data changes in the system. So that form control for the user is there. And I'm watching for value changes on the form group. So if that value changes, the update on triggers that it does, what triggers that change event. So, and the idea is this debounces it. So if I make 3 changes in quick succession, so if I do, even if I make that 600 milliseconds or whatever, it will bounce, it will bundle up those changes together. So if I change the name to X and then to Y, it will only take Y. It won't take X and then Y. It won't fire multiple events. So if we do this and go in here, interesting. It does an update to start with. That's kind of worrying. And this dot form group dot is and not pristine. Let's try that now. There we go. So if I go in there and the form's valid but nothing's changed, then we don't need to do this. So there's problem number 1. OnBlur doesn't fire for that component. Update on change. Oh no. The dogs are in playful mode, which normally means something's going to get chewed. So if we change that, there we go. So now that set's there. Interesting. So that worked, but that didn't work. I'll be right back. I think the dogs are chewing something, shouldn't be.
Hello. Hi, Jeffin. How you doing? My apologies. Yeah, there's actually two dogs there. That is Loki and Taylor. Loki, who is now going to start barking. Awesome. Welcome in. Okay, so today, I'm already 40 minutes in the stream. I've barely touched the line of code. But today I'm going to focus on some of these bugs slash quirks slash requirements in the system to try and stabilize some of this stuff. Because if I leave it going, right, if I leave this stuff now and think, oh, well, it's kind of working, I can capture this, I can move on to features, I'm going to get stuck in this world of not understanding these problems, right? And if I defer these now, when do I fix them? Because the more I add to the system, the more technical debt I incur. So a couple of hours here, as challenging as it might be to sit down and focus on, is going to be well worth it, right? So I need to understand events. I need to understand what data is triggering what changes and get a better handle on these things. So changing the assigned user out does not, right? That does something. Right, that fires off an event, that updates the server side. However, that doesn't. Can I do... You can't do that. Now that form control is planning item detail, associated projects, assigned user, that is app user select, which is an autocomplete just wrapped up. And this is a component of its own because it's a user selection. I'm going to have this all over the place, right? The projects as well might actually end up being that. On change. Ah, that's why. So on user select, I fire up the on change event. I need to fire the on change when I remove. So is that an event I can subscribe to? That is the question. So as always, if you're interested in what I'm doing, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm happy to answer I'm happy to answer things. I'm just looking to the right over here right now because I don't want to keep flicking back and forth between features. So what I'm looking for is, so I clearly allow on user select, right? App user select. So I have on select. Is there an on clear? There is. Will that let that happen? No. Clear. I mean, that doesn't really matter. So this dot selected equals undefined, this dot unchange. Hey, Canny. Things are good. How about you? So now that should trigger a change. Anyway. So we go to, you are going to work now, and we clear that out. We hit that, and we save. We've removed Jeffrey from there. So now if I refresh, Jeffrey shouldn't ultimately be on there. Work is boring and so on to distract me. There we go. So that was a Control R, so that definitely removed. If we go to the events, the notification outbox triggered a planning item updated. It's doing 2 again. Planning item assigned. So I've got a feeling I've got a another. What am I triggering? Oh, planning item assigned, planning item updated. Okay, so that's fine. I published 2 events. What I should have done is 1 outbox event though. I shouldn't have duplicates of these. Yeah, okay, so that's fine. So this published the change. What did you learn today? I am learning, well, I'm trying to reinforce the client app. I'm trying to make sure the client app is definitely working. So I'm trying to fix some of the little bugs and quirks that I've added over the last couple of weeks of just kind of stuff code in. And stabilize the application before it gets too far out of hand. And then I can call this story done. So the story that I focused on was this. So rather than this being a flyover, it becomes an actual panel so I can navigate through the items and work on them. What I'm trying to capture is the right events. So, because I'm changing it I'm updating the item on save, on blur and saving back up to the server. Although that's about to change as well. So this is going to be fun. The joys of trying to build a UI. So I need to go to planning item detail and remove that debugger, otherwise it's going to keep tripping me up. So what I'm trying to do is, okay, let's unassign Jeffrey from this one. So you see it updated here on the right. So if I, again, remove Jeffrey, it changes. That's great, but if I go back here now and refresh, actually the events are going through quickly, so that's okay. But I am reliant upon the events coming through. Right, so those are the events there. So let's test. So we got assigned projects was kind of working yesterday. So planning, tenant management. Right, they're there now. But if I click away and click back, the reason that happens is because those fields, those assigned projects, are updated from the server when I click on the detail. So planning item, detail. So when I ask for load detail and go to the planning items, so this basically goes up to this method and says, okay, well, if it's not current or the current has pending updates, then we're going to return the object as it stands, right? So this is actually just a map. Well, actually, this is a merge change of everything that we currently have in the updated. Otherwise, if it is current, I just get the requirements and projects. But what that means is I'm always merging in those changes. Because if I change review date, right, if I change this one to be 14th, right, so that moves that up there. Now I move away and move back. That's still June 14th, right? If I refresh, it's still June 14th because it's actually gone through the server. So that's actually working okay.
By the way, that didn't reload because it's not loading that from the server, that field. Unless these fields get there quickly. And didn't I change planning and ticketing? Actually, let's not do planning and ticketing. Let's do story and ticketing. Okay, so these assigned projects will be selectable from the filtering. If I move away and come back, right, it's okay now, but when I click on it, didn't I assign story and ticketing? The second update just hit. So again, this distributed nature of this is the command fires from the client to the server. It updates the data in the main data store and publishes a Kafka event. That Kafka event then gets consumed by the view. The view updates the data. So what happened there was the first time I went in, the first event. So again, when I click this, it loads this information. It doesn't take what it's got in its own store. And the reason being, I don't want to load all the data for all of these all the time, right? No. The front end's not directly connected to Kafka. I'm just kind of short-circuiting some of the steps involved there. But ultimately, it publishes a Kafka message from the write store to the read store that ends up in the read store in this instance. What happened was the two events fired because again I updated it from planning and story to planning and ticketing to story and ticketing. The first one hit. I came in here. It worked fine because it loaded the first event, and then when I clicked it again, it loaded the data as it now was. But what I want to do is once I change this, it should stay in the local store and only update if it's changed. Again, I'm trying to figure out that process flow to try and avoid noise. Because I do know when things change. I just don't want to broadcast every single change to every single client. Because in this instance, this isn't assigned to my user. Right? I am the only user in the system right now. This isn't assigned to my user. So the only way I know this has changed is if I get it broadcast to me. But I'd have to track on the server side which items I care about to be able to be pushed down to. Is that something I even want to try and do? Because I don't, again, because I wouldn't have received an event to tell me that this changed, right? So I would not know the server had updated this information. And if I load the server data every time and this event hasn't triggered yet, right? So if I change this to include tenant management now, right? That event has now gone off. And it updates here once I've saved to the server. So that gives me my indicator that this did work. But if I quickly click away and come back and click on that, the event fired through. But again, that wouldn't be there because now it will load what the server says. If that event is delayed, this is going to be out of step. Is that acceptable? I'm not sure. So I think what I need to fix here is a little bit of process flow as well as a little bit of data correction. So load detail, well, all this is loaded in here, right? So there's no detail there. So if I remove that, and again, I don't know pending updates. What happens if? So the reason I created load detail for is because obviously I was loading more information. But what if I don't make loading requirements a part of loading the detail? I don't need to store requirements as part of the... That's a much bigger refactoring. Hold on. I've already got lots of changes to commit, so let me... I like where we're going. I just don't... Okay, let's commit the Angular pieces. So UI rework for panel, moved panel. I'm open to ideas, by the way. If anyone's got experience of doing this on the client side, like tracking changes and updating changes behind the scenes, I'd really like to know if you have any experience or know of any pitfalls that I could fall into here. Because this is where my experience is definitely lacking on the front end, right? I've done a lot of front end, but again, more dynamic UIs and stuff is not something I've been allowed to tinker with in the past. So, and it is something that I want to happen, right? So the idea would be that if someone changes this story, or this planning item, sorry, not story, if someone changes this planning item because it's assigned to them, right? I might be viewing it. Should I be told about changes? Possible. Actually, no, I don't need that to be pushed to me. I can just decide whether I need to merge the details in. Because if I have a dirty object, yeah, I need to track dirty. And basically, when I request the detail, I need to say, okay, does the detail match? Many apps do something like, this item has changed, want to refresh. Yeah, I'm trying to think through the logistics of doing that as well. Ow. Let me commit this. I should commit this. Move panel, removed side. Detail is now a column layout that shows based on a click. Include add requirements as a dialog. Requirement as a dialog. Because when you just refresh the value, you may override stuff from the user. Yeah, that's the challenge. Include add requirement as a dialog. Commit that. Again, my commit notes don't need to be extensive at this point. If I was working with somebody else, then I have a different challenge. This is getting slower. There you go. Okay, this is an important one. Remove publish planning item on added requirement.
Now trigger item updated as well. So I'm doing a bit of a naughty thing in terms of my domain events. I'm using them to explore. They're not doing anything. A lot of them are just firing for no reason right now, but it is something that I do know I want to use later on. I just don't have the use for it right this second, which is not really a very good practice. But it's fine. Okay, because when you reverse the value, you may override stuff from these. Okay, so that might be my answer. Again, if I change these fields, right? If I change this to Jeffrey right now, right? Once that saves to the server, it updates here because that is now in the store. If I navigate away and navigate back and I reload that for whatever reason, my value matters because the server, just because the view hasn't got the changes yet, doesn't mean that it won't get those changes afterwards. So I don't necessarily want to pull what's on the server right this second because again the eventing system might be delayed. I know more because I've changed it, and maybe that's what I need to do. I need to say, okay, well, I'm in a dirty state. But again, if I load the server data, do I just disagree? Or do I pull last updated? And if my last update is greater, I don't worry about using the server data. Or do I use the fact that I've changed it to register for this client a subscription, and then when that item change comes through, it pushes down to me? And the reason I'm focusing on this right now is because this is a massive component going forward, right? If I figure out the patterns here in this screen, I have figured out a lot of the challenges that I will face in the future for all edits, all updates, all grids, etc. And then I can build on top of that quite well. So again, I don't know the item has changed on the server, right? So the want to refresh thing is a challenge. Right now I'm loading it on demand. So when I click on this, what I do is I call load detail for, and the idea being there that when I load this screen, I load the store up with these items, and it comes with the title, the review date, the created by, the assigned to, and the projects. That is the bare minimum I need for this screen. When I click on it, I load detail because requirements are not necessary in this screen, right? But what's happening is if I click on this, I load the detail and it removes this piece and the requirements, because those are now, they might not be there yet on the view side of things. So forgive me, I'm kind of just thinking through what this looks like.
So I've got two options. Well, I've got more than two options, but I've got a couple of options as I see it. I mark the object as dirty when I change it, and therefore I can't trust anything from the server until the server tells me, yeah, I've got those changes. But that doesn't make sense because the server doesn't know what changes I'm talking about, because I could have fired off 6 different sets of changes. If I use last updated, right? Okay, let's have a look. Network. Wow, they all load as separate JSs. That's going to be, I hope something I can fix later. Where's my token? Hello? Add options. So what we're going to do is we're going to open Banana Cake Pop. Yeah. New session. I never remember this password. Worst tool in the world. Okay, we've been signed into that properly. So then let's go to where do we do it in this one? This is always a challenge as well. Authorization, paste that in there. So now we can do planning items. Get planning items. This is what I want. Okay. So last updated. I should have that. Okay. So if we change our last updated, and the last updated from the server comes down and it is before our last updated, we don't pull the change. Otherwise, we pull the change. And that way, well, let's test that, right? Let's make sure that's happening. So that way we don't need this necessarily, because what we do then is we just do this becomes this. That's that. And we need last updated though. And right, we need those two fields. So planning item has to have they added and last updated date, and that can be nullable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the comparison. Now this does need to change further. So this now needs to do what? What are you not liking now? You should be good. Okay, you're good. But we only want to do that if current.last updated and not equal to null, and what do I like about that? Yeah, actually, that goes. So only if the return, otherwise return an empty object, and I think that should work for that. Isn't that how? ID. Oh, hold on. Actually, we can do this better. We should just do return undefined. So this is a right, and then what we do there is it's accepting that now. Let's see. Afternoon, Mr. Jones. How you doing? So I think I'm actually thinking that what I want to do is be a bit more explicit there and say if should patch state, right? That way, this becomes a little bit more clear. I don't have to do this build changes. I can do that's updated, right? And then I can just say if should patch state, and then that is should patch state, and then that does basically a return. Right. It returns Boolean. So if should patch state current and updated, that's updated. Otherwise, resolver current will return the current state again. He says with confidence as it doesn't work. What is current? Where is current? Current is a planning item. Huh? The problem with that, I got AI fatigue. Oh no. Uh-oh. Poop fan. For you, Mr. Jones? Or me? Just FYI. AI fatigue. I don't know. Right now, I just don't think I've used enough AI stuff to know to really like in the media and all over the tech stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a lot of AI. But I haven't actually got to using any of it yet. Well, trying to prevent it from happening. We found out last night we needed to update a license key for a third-party service we consume before the 18th, when they're going to remove it. The request came in, but no one told our area. Ah. Ouch. So now I'm supporting a release tonight. Ugh. I built a bot last night that I can talk with using voice. Oh, nice. Nice. That's cool. Have you seen Cito's bot? He does have some conversational parts with that, but yeah. So it's all local. Use a conversational model in Python to turn text to speech. That's impressive. Talking about third-party stuff, Mr. Jones, as well. My former employer, my friend still works there, and they had a provider that basically deprecated their API and didn't tell the company. So they had to scramble to implement a completely new, completely incompatible API in the space of 2 weeks and deliver it. It was completely different. Dear. Okay, so what I need to do in here is when I update the planning item, what I actually need to do. So update planning item calls this service, which pushes all the changes up, right? So it takes title, description, assigned user, project identifiers. So all this stuff goes up with it, right? What I need to do as well is I need to changes. So again, changes. There's a way of doing this, isn't there? Is the syntax const updated equals last updated equals new date? What's the universal one? How do I get UTC date? The Apple way. I read that C# will be more open to break things in the future. Probably carefully, but still. Right. So actually, that's a good point, Phil Schnabel. You just brought something up to me that I remembered, and I wanted to raise this. So, clickbaity videos, a little bit of clickbait video, right? I don't know if any of you saw it. Actually, I probably want to do this. I probably want to do this in this way. Apologies for the light mode eye bleed. So I like Nick. Nick's videos are good. Right? But the other day, he posted this. C# 13 can break your code. Microsoft is breaking your code in C# 13. Right? With his concerned face, right? I get it. But if you watch the video, it's not actually so that the thing they're doing is if you have is right, but it's the thing they're doing is if you right now if you have a public int this field gets set, right? And you want to do something with one of them but not the other, and not use the backing field, create the backing field, you have to, you have to break this out in traditional sense. But what you can do is you can now do, you can use the reserve word field, right, to get access to that backing field. So there's a reserve word field coming in the next version of C#. I don't know of anywhere I call that field. I don't know where anywhere I have the word the property field anywhere in there. So it's a good change to be able to access the field. And the point, the reason I brought it up on you saying they'll be more open to break things in the future is because it does run the risk of breaking code. Yeah. And Microsoft have tended to stay away from that sort of stuff and tried to work around those things. Whereas now they're like, okay, you know what? We are going to make some changes that may break some existing code. So it's a worth watch video. I would say it's worth watching if you're interested in C# and stuff. So, but it's more, I don't like Microsoft is breaking your code. Right? Like, if you look at his normal videos, 47K in 10 days, 54K in 7 days, 29K in 2 days. Yeah, but when you call your variable field, it's your own problem. It's not a good variable name. I mean, that's right. Yeah. There's a very small number of people that have probably done this overall, but it's more, for me, it's more I don't like that level of, I get the YouTube algorithm and it's clearly working just from those view numbers. But it's, yeah. People latch onto that. Onto that way of thinking as well. And it doesn't, I don't think, from memory, I don't think he qualifies that very well either. He's like, oh, for the very few people going to be affected. Yeah. But either way, yeah, they are going to be more open to some breaking changes in the future. But I think that is a very that is a very easy one to introduce without too much consequence. So field will be a reserved word in that context. But like Canny says, if you're using the word field to describe something, then all right. How's it going? Oh, bro. Okay, so let me put this back to what it was. I can never remember the syntax for this. So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to patch the state of that entity. And then apply the change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge the last updated date in there. They should have an auto fix action. Hopefully they fix their down CLI format fix. It's always broken with some obscure error for me. Oof. Ignore. There you go. Yeah, it's I'm lucky I don't use a lot of the CLI stuff. How do I do this? How do I merge an object? Let updated equals. I think I want to say it's something like item comma. Blah. It is something like that, right? I can do that, and then building a new sofa. Nice. I need to do that. Actually, I probably should build a sofa. The dogs then can use it as a chew toy. um, JavaScript date. So the date.utc, is that actually a thing? No. Is date by default is not a UTC date, is it? Date.now. Oh, date.now is UTC. Let's try. Okay. Why don't you like that? Because you don't think you're planning item anymore. Yeah, I was planning item. Why does that work? And yep, I'm on our second one now, but my dogs are a bit more mature now. Yeah. Yeah, I was just turn 1, so they're still in chew and play mode. Get date as UTC date JavaScript. That's not a thing though. Like date dot UTC, I have to provide that parameters, so that's not the thing. Okay, get UTC date. Okay, but that doesn't like that now. Types of property last updated are incompatible. This type number is not assignable. Right, exactly. The fact, like I'm sat here thinking, am I being an idiot because I don't understand how the date times work properly in JavaScript? But then I'm seeing all these that are clearly right. Date, JavaScript date, a single month. Does it default to UTC?
Okay, it can be interpreted. Well, let's have a look. Let's have a look at what it does. Let's put a debugger there. That's the simplest thing. To understand it is to see the data. Okay, so let's go back here. Items with review window does not exist. Planning item table. I didn't change planning item table component. Yes, it does. No, it genuinely thinks it doesn't exist. Let's stop running and restart. We need to make sure that is going to build, because if it throws an error, there's no point in even trying to do this, because there you go, it rebuilt. Okay, it just got stuck in a weird loop. Okay, so if I change this now, so the problem there is on the query, if should patch state. So if current equals null, or last updated if current last updated equals null, and equals null, actually it doesn't matter. If current last updated is null, then we haven't changed anything, so we're good. Or updated.last updated is not equal to null, and okay, so the problem there was when I came in, I was checking if they were both not null and returning true based upon that, so that everything else would be false. So I wouldn't load the data. So that loads the data now. So if I go in here and I change planning and tenant management, right, we get to our updated, and our updated last updated is 832. Again, that's what was concerning me. So now when I come, so planning and tenant management update to PrimeNG and stuff. Now it doesn't load. Why doesn't it? Oh, because it doesn't resolve. It doesn't resolve. That's the problem now. So in the case where it shouldn't patch the state, it doesn't resolve with the state and therefore doesn't render the state, because the query planning item detail relies upon that. So this never happens, and therefore the item is never set, which means it doesn't complete. So I need to resolve return, but it doesn't like that. So actually, let's write this a little bit different. If not should patch state. Let's do it that way. Then resolver current return. Why don't you like this? The argument type of planning or undefined is not assignable to parameter of type planning or promise like. I'm not sure that's really a stunning change to do, but that seems to make sense. Okay, so there's no. Okay, let's remove tenant management. That updates the date there. So now when we move back and come back in here and go there, planning is still loaded. So to validate that, we need to put a breakpoint on the query. So let's add tenant management there. We hit that breakpoint. Now when we go back and click on that, current, last updated, and the last updated differ, because there's no last updated on there. What? Oh no. That's right. So that one is right because I failed to actually add the field, which is a stunning omission. But that's interesting. That would test that way. The annoying thing is the only way of actually integration testing this properly is to basically get to creating the other user and logging in and changing the data on the other user. So, but I don't have that screen yet, so that's going to take a little while to build out that test, which means that I'm going to have to come back around and test this. And this is the challenge with building software. Once you start to grow beyond the basic feature set and you start to have more requirements, ordering those things so that you have the right pieces available is at the right time is increasingly more difficult. So what I'm looking at here is I need to planning item service. So I need to add, so fetch all. So I think it's reasonable to fetch date created and last updated on the fetch all. Fetch one again. There's not much cost involved in that. So planning items. Uh-oh. Date created and last updated. Date added. That'll be why. Date added, last updated. Let's pull this query out and see what happens. So that's fetch one. I'll see if you change it in both places, right? There you go. It's miraculously working now. So let's go in here. That loads this up. Our current has the last updated of the 13th. Our updated is the 13th at 12. 35, 33. So they're identical. So I could take the current. So then I go and change it to add story, remove planning. Right, so last updated now is 8th. Then go back here, go in there. So our current last updated is that, and our updated so I don't think that's doing what I think it should do. Step into. Because I think what's happening there is current dot last updated and updated dot last updated. So they're not the same. Now they're identical times, so I would ignore that change. But if that's even a second or two beyond that, then I will always pull that last updated in. But that's okay, because that means I've got that change, right? The only way this is not the same is if I pull that data and it doesn't update. So if I stop the view consumers, right? Couldn't they have used context-aware parsing like they do with, for example, record? Valid var record equals 1. Huh? Am I missing something? Am I missing something I just showed on screen? Record XX int z. Here, record is a keyword. Yes. Okay. But you can still use okay. We're talking about field still, right? I meant with field, yeah. Why couldn't they have fixed it in the same as they did when they introduced record as a keyword? I'm not sure. I don't use field as a property name, so because I think it's a little bit too. I don't know of any case where I would need to use field unless I'm being super descriptive of the actual data. Really hope they'll make it opt out, not opt in. Hey, Jackie, now hope you're well. So there was some suggestion in the comments there that you could actually update the .NET version but not update the language version, so it would still function. Similar it could be with record. Who in their right mind uses record as a name, but someone out there does. Right, and that's what they're relying upon. There's very few people, but again, I feel that the people that are going to be most affected by that stuff are hobbyists and people who have thrown together code bases to try and get a thing achieved, and not the large enterprises. So their bigger market is unaffected, I think. I just think it's odd that it seems to exist a solution, but they didn't use it here, but used it for record. Yeah. And again, this is the .NET team. That feature has been deferred for 2 entire versions, so or rather the C# language team. So it's been deferred. So use of field can be used in more places than record syntax. Yeah, maybe. I don't use it, so it's not something that I'm comfortable with, but yeah. But for me, the main point was that the fact that Nick was a little bit clickbaity in the title, more so than usual, because people will see that as Microsoft being bad, and it's not. Microsoft are trying to evolve the language and evolve the framework to help people do the things they want to do in the way they want to do them. I like the fact that they've got that partial implementation, because now you can put events like on change in there without messing around with the get, because you don't have to then explicitly implement the underscore, like the private backing field. Another good one is you're not allowed to use link. Yeah. Okay, so that goes in there. So now when we change the assigned projects, so if you're new to the stream and you are wondering what I'm doing, or you have any questions about what I'm doing, I am always happy to talk about this stuff. This is something I do care about doing, and what did I just change? I just changed something then, and I didn't really see what I changed. So current is 8:45. Updated is the 12th. The 12:29. So I should never pull that one. Right, because again, my concern here is that, is it comparing? See, that's UTC. No, that's converted to my time as well. Okay, no, that's not. That's a UTC date that's got my time zone attached to it. So that's really bad. Oh, I hate dates. Then he also has uncontroversial ones as, why is clean code hated? Okay, I'd forgotten about that one for a few days, I suppose. I'm fairly sure that I use field in some contexts, like two-dimensional arrays, but still would rather have my code break and force me to fix it than the language being stuck. Yeah, and it's not like it can't be found quickly. I would hope that that is not rampant throughout your code base, right? And actually, going straight into Fuel Snabble's next comment about the clean code hated. Clean code, right? If you've got a thing called field, are you being descriptive? So writing a better variable name or writing a more appropriate variable name might actually be necessary there. So it can help. A forced review. Oh man, it's giving me because the server side is giving me the date, but it's giving me the date already UTC, but giving me in my local format. Oh, I hate dates. I don't like getting stuck in this sort of stuff, because I think this is a valid way of doing it, right? Because then I am comparing what I say. When I say I have a change, then you will not push to me until my date, unless my changes are out of date or refresh the screen. Last updated. What I'm trying to figure out right now is, where do I fix this? Here is not the place. Here is not the place. I need last updated to come down. So last updated there comes down with my time zone attached, but in UTC. So what am I looking for here? I'm looking forward to in 10 years' time sitting updating 40-year-old Linux code to fix the 2038 bug. 2038 bug. What did we miss in that one? And by looking forward. So for me, it was kind of interesting because I started Unix time flips then back to 1917. Ah. Nice. I started as a developer in September of 1999. So I was just in time for C#, just in time for the Millennium Bug as well. We were building software using BASIC on a Unix system, and 2-digit dates and stuff, and yeah, that was fun times. To start your professional career as a junior, going through and trying to fix that sort of stuff. We didn't actually have that much stuff to do, to be honest. But it was yeah, quite fun. Deflux just in time to see out the end of the stream. Yeah, you wish. I wish, actually. I would happily, if I could, I would happily stream until 6 o'clock tonight. There would be nothing that would please me more. I worked out the input output stuffs. Oh, with your EF stuff? Oh no, Angular. Oh, you've been working in Angular? 48-hour stream, all right. Like a smart cookie. 48-hour stream. I think after a 12-hour stream, I'd pretty much be fast asleep on my desk, but yeah. What am I looking up here? I'm looking up, not YouTube, I'm looking up GraphQL. Is it GraphQL though? Dates as UTC. So the challenge is, which side of the system is the problem? Hot chocolate. What were you doing Angular, Deflux? I'm sure you were disliking it, but work-related stuff. Yeah, so I get it working. Not have any major issues with Angular. I like the structure. The challenge is, again, things like this where I'm working against my understanding of how it's converting things. I've got to figure things out. Trigger an action of a row click to make a HTTP request, and the return of that data was like sent over to a different component to engage. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So this page, these are different components. Let me remove my debuggers because that's not really helpful anymore. Where did I put my debuggers? Oh dear. yeah, so I click in here. When I click on one of these, it loads this panel. These are different components. The annoying thing is it's not loading requirements anymore. That's definitely a challenge. That's not as intended. Oh well. Yeah, I'm loading up components. Hey Mojo, how you doing? Welcome in. Actually, that's a good point. Does that change up there? That doesn't change up there. That's interesting. Planning item detail. What bugs are we hunting? We're hunting all the little bugs that I was finding yesterday with kind of the behavior of the page, not updating things, keeping hold of things that it shouldn't be doing, all manner of challenges. So kind of updating this piece now, moving away and moving back would load this object up again and reset these. So I'm kind of creating or tracking a last updated thing so that I'm trusting that what I've got on the client, if I have a newer version, is okay to keep hold of and not apply the update to. Also, things like which fields were, so this assigns that, so you can see assign to changes, but then this wouldn't remove that. So there was like quirks of the system there. If I move this to the 17th, right, that should change. That's fine. But if I go away and come back, or reload it, it should. And this is actually going to revert now because that's actually the service isn't running. So it's like trying to stop it from running over itself and fixing those things. Oh no. I give it 30 seconds. So what I gotta figure out is the UTC date stuff, because that's going to trip me up. If I'm not comparing UTC to UTC genuinely, then I'm going to have an issue, right? So I've got to store UTC when I capture the date on the client side when I update the record, and then when I get the UTC date back, if it's any time in the future, then it's newer and therefore I should take it. Okay, so you should be back. So yeah, the distributed nature of the system does lend to some challenges. So when I nope, not that one. Open, load from file. What's it called? SkyDraw. Layout with client. Nope. Open, load from file. Next steps, here we go. I see where you're going to. I had to set up the entire Atlassian suite earlier this year, so I'm pretty familiar. Oh man, I accidentally backed out the ads, so they're replaying. No. Let me know when you're back. So I gotta learn about GraphQL dates. That's the challenge. Do I, on the server side, when I return a date? Because right now, I'm manipulating the objects, and I don't want to be. I want to actually return. So right now, I'm returning these date times from transforms. But I'm thinking I want to hook up GraphQL directly to the entity framework context, because this is a read-only
version of the data, right? There's no write components to this. Welcome back. So yeah, the disconnected nature of the system. So this is my system diagram, right? So when I make a change on the client, it writes through the API and goes into the relevant component. So again, modular monolith, right? It writes into the component. This write database is the source of truth for this information. It then publishes a Kafka event, which is just an integration event, which is just a copy of the object. The object then gets, produced out of that Kafka instance into the Kafka queue topics, and then I have a view database a view consumer sat watching that pulls it into a view store. So the view consumer knows about all these topics, pulls this information together and aggregates, pulls the data together, not aggregates, just pulls the data together into readable forms. So it can speed up the reads. I can index things differently than the writes. The writes are pure write and the reads are pure reads. And then the GraphQL API sits in front of that. What it does mean is data can be disconnected. So I can write something from the client. I don't immediately turn around and query it because I don't have the current version. I have to wait for it to come through here before that's available again. But so on the client, in the meantime, while I'm waiting for those events to process, I have to know that I don't want to reload the data off the server because the data on the server is older than the version I have. And that's what I'm kind of dealing with right now. And I'm going to have to compare UTC dates. Because again, if I post something off the client and I store the UTC date as last updated, when it comes down, if my last updated is newer than their last updated, I just ignore that change for now, right? And then I don't have to worry about telling the client that something changed and making that very chatty. The benefits of using Kafka here are later on when I want to introduce Elasticsearch, or I want to introduce reporting, or I want to introduce data warehouses. I can just hook them into this feed of data. I don't have to change any of my core components. None of these have a reason to change for those other uses. And I can expand the system. So this is what I'm saying, Mojo. Like, I'm happy to go through this stuff and demonstrate it, especially on stream, because I think it is useful to see. So it's not the same. It's a different DB. So here you go. Here's the actual databases. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. Control P. So there's 4 databases right now: planning items, tenant management, tickets, and view. So planning items stores the actual planning items itself. So this is the source of truth for planning items. So this, as it aligns, is there. So this database is that database there. When Kafka produces data, I have a separate view database. And what this does is it pulls projects, tenants, planning items all together into a view form. Now, right now, they all look pretty much similar to their other side components, but it doesn't mean they have to be. So they can be indexed differently. They can be they're focused on read. So I can treat this database however I want to do. I can create indexes specifically on it for just the reading aspect. I don't have to worry about it. So I can normalize or denormalize this data as I choose. So again, like planning items here, associated projects on this side is just an identifier, a public identifier of a project, because projects live in tenant management, right? So projects are over here. But this system actually has projects because it needs to get the readable version of it. And then the association is one of these IDs to one of these IDs. So it's similar but not the same schema. It is a distinct data store. And again, this one is essentially read-only for the application. Whereas all these are the write databases and they just store their information. But thinking about it this way is allowed me to kind of realize that I don't need to know a lot of other information. So if I have like associated projects, so projects right now live in tenant management because they are a global concern. Ticketing, planning, and tenant management, and that isn't tenant management. That's stories. That's a copy and paste fail. Save current file. So what I've realized is that if they have an association, all they need is the public identifier of the association. This database doesn't need to know about projects. It just needs to know it has projects associated. And I can store the data I need in there. And then the read database down here can combine all that information, and I can just pull that data out. So it does give me a lot more flexibility. And these data stores are very much focused on just themselves. So they don't need to be. At first, I had one of these consuming events, right? So I had this consuming projects and then validating projects, but that doesn't matter because the project is produced from here. I can only have attached the project because it was valid, right? I was allowed to do it. Therefore, it doesn't matter. This isn't the job of this to validate that data. And once I embrace that, it means that I don't actually have, these systems don't really talk to each other. So I use Kafka for that. There is one instance that I've got to come up. Eventually it will arise, and I'm introducing message bus for this, mass transit. Ticketing will be able to promote an item to planning, and ticketing will be able to promote an item to a story, right? Those are events that need to go to the individual things. But by still using a service bus, I can still improve the reliability of those things. And again, they don't need to be directly associated. So planning doesn't need to know that ticketing is going to send it something. Ticketing needs to know planning will accept this command and process it. So there's some future stuff there is service bus, but overall, these components don't communicate with each other in any way, shape, or form. They don't need to store copies of each other's data. They just need to store their data, and anything else is just a kind of an external reference. They're not validating the data here. They're just storing what they're told to store. And then the view is combining these things and essentially validating it for you, because it will provide that consistency. And Kafka gives me that ability to expand my use of the data without changing any individual system. So if someone says, hey, I want to know how many tickets a day we're creating, I can create a consumer for ticket. Or for planning item, I can actually create a metrics consumer, if I wanted to do it that way, that would consume these items and log them to a data store that is specific for that purpose. I don't have to change the rest of my system to do it. So yeah, what I need to do is I need to look at they are right now. They don't need to be. They don't even need to be the same technology. One of the things I did experiment with early on is actually tickets, because tickets is a lot of text-based information. You're capturing notes, you're capturing comments, you're capturing documents, etc. I actually had tickets was a Couchbase server. So again, the benefit of having this distributed system means that I can choose the technology that suits the thing I'm doing. And it just plays its part in the larger system. So right now they're all sat on the same server. They wouldn't need to be. The view database could be actually its own independent server with, different scaling to the others. These don't need to be as big. If most of what I'm doing is query. So if you look at most systems, most of the time you're querying, you're not actually writing. You're doing a lot more query than write. So you could actually scale these independently and doing it this way. But again, later on, when I introduce GraphQL, Elasticsearch, or whatever search system I use, I'll be able to add that in without any modification to these items, which is a big benefit.
and I can expand the components. And again, modular monolith, because the application stack is broken down into those components. So planning is a component, teams right now is a component, but I don't use it. Tenant management, tickets is a little bit forgotten right this second, because I've focused my efforts on this planning aspect. And then view is its own component. So realistically, from a diagramming perspective, this isn't the greatest diagram in terms of showing the actual the modules of the monolith, because view is very much its own thing over here. It just consumes this data. So I just got to learn how to describe that flow. I mean, it does add some significant complexities to the overall system, right? Because from a deployment perspective, this is kind of scary, because each one of these modules could have one or more services. Invariably, they have one API endpoint, right? But if they do need to consume things, or they do need to handle things, they're going to have multiple services. I'm not necessarily going to put them as part of the same. I'm not going to put them as background services in the API necessarily. Hey Movi, how you doing? But they could have one or more services. The view has consumers, because it's obviously consuming events from Kafka. It's also got the API for the view, etc. Fascinating. I was going to ask how you would query related objects directly in the DB, but I guess that's what the bottom DB is for. Right, so the bottom DB, again, I have GraphQL hooked up, right? So again, I'm pulling projects, name, prefix. Yeah, I can pull prefix, right? So I'm pulling, can't return null for non-nullable field. Did I remove prefix? I must have removed prefix. But I can pull more data for these things. These things are stored in different databases. This is not Insomnia. This is Banana Cake Pop for GraphQL stuff. So these objects are combined in this core database, right? So this view database, again, I have so planning item. This looks almost identical to its planning items counterpart, right? Except this has GUIDs in place of those IDs. How is filtering handled in this GraphQL? Filtering, I have not done too much of yet. Ultimately what it's going to happen is it's going to, because I use hot chocolate for the GraphQL component on the server side, I'm going to end up with the queries are going to be able to filter. I think right now the only one that actually has anything on it, if I do get planning item by ID, this one allows me to specify an identifier. So that's pretty much the only filtering I've done so far. Oh man, I may have a million questions about GraphQL. Our front-end developer forces onto GraphQL. It looks kind of messy so far. So at my previous place, I kind of put GraphQL in as a layer for query, because I had this vision, but I didn't get this solution. Some because I didn't have the maturity of understanding to even get to this place, and some because, you know, other developers in the group weren't able to kind of see the vision. This is pretty much the version where I was heading, though, in terms of, I think I had modular monoliths in my head all along. I think GraphQL in this context works really well because I am only querying it. I'm not writing to this data store from any application piece, right? It's only being consumed data that's combined into this data store. So the data store is very much optimized for, and that's why I'm saying what I might do here is disconnect these specifications entirely and hook GraphQL straight into the entity framework store. So I have direct access to the data store. You can still control access to fields, etc. You still have permissions, etc. but that will allow me to write more appropriate queries, and also it will execute as queries. Right now I'm pulling more data because I'm using these specs, and these specs pull all this data every time, regardless of what fields I'm actually asking for. Whereas if I hook it up to SQL directly, Entity Framework will adapt that query to the things I'm asking for, so I can bend it a little bit more, and filtering and stuff becomes better there. But I like it. I think this is working the way I want it to work right now, for the query side of things. GQL is good in that it allows you to minimize the return data, but it is more complex to understand and parse. We have GQL plus REST and a specialized grid query endpoint at work. Of course, we implemented our own GQL to SQL transformer using hot chocolate to parse GQL into it. Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm using specs, so I'm adapting the requests and pulling it. So that get planning item by ID, yeah, I pass in the identifier. So I am actually filtering it there. But if I didn't do that and I was using GraphQL to filter it, I'd be returning the full list and then doing the filtering outside. So I'd lose some efficiency there. And that's why I'm thinking I want to get rid of this. And that should be first. I want to get rid of this and kind of just hook it straight into the database. OData was hot a few years ago, but GQL took over. Yeah. View consumers, view. Let's restart one. But now I'm missing a filtering in G code because now we have. I mean, you know, keep watching, and this is going to grow, right? I do want to filter this out. I've got to think about the use cases of this, right? What data do I need to filter? What do I want to look at in here? Because ultimately, this list should be the things you need to work on. So really, assigned to isn't even a necessary column here, because realistically, I should only be pulling work that's assigned to me by default. Assigned to could be a column that I add in later, but I want to filter this. You know, what projects does it use? What when's the actual review date? What's the created by, etc. And again, last updated. There's going to be requirements, etc. You know, has requirements, doesn't have requirements. There's lots of filtering that I need to do that I'm going to learn more about. But I think so far, I think that this is the right solution for me. I think it does what I need to do. I shouldn't have to create any weird APIs to get specific data. And I have the time, right? I have the time to flex this and tinker with this. So it's I have that luxury right this second that I wouldn't not necessarily have in a business. That being said, I probably need to pull my finger out and get some features in here. If I ever want to build this out as a real product, I'm going to have to start taking some harsh measures to move it forward to get to where I want to be. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, when it comes to content about this, right, I'm not sharing this code base because this is it is a personal quest to get this to become a product, right? Whether that happens or not, I don't necessarily know. At the point I decide it's not going to be a product, it's too much work, or whatever, then I would open source it. But the problem is, even if I open source it, it's already quite a massive project. I mean, I've seen bigger, but there's a lot going on and there's a lot of moving parts just to get this up and running. I have Docker running with Kafka, with Console, SQL Server, Redis, and that's before I even get to the telemetry components. I've got open telemetry stuff I want to add in here. I've got to experiment with that again. Again, if I bring in more data stores, it becomes ever more complicated. So to open source this there'd be no benefit because no one is going to just pull it out and go, yeah, I can easily set that up, right? I wish you were where I work because you have a full understanding of what we're trying to do. That's a lot. Raw source. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of moving parts, and I'd love to work on this sort of stuff with other people. Like building this sort of stuff is where I'm at my best. I feel I'm happy. I'm solving problems. I'm designing systems the way that I feel works. And yeah, everything's going to have a challenge. You should definitely hook in Aspire. Yeah, I'm I am looking. I just, again, the Aspire docs, really, Microsoft? So if you look at this, build your first .NET Aspire app, right? So create the Aspire template, test the app locally, right? Great. Add Aspire to an existing app, right? Download our sample and go and add it in our sample. Okay, so not a distributed system. Just build up that. So to me, I'm like, okay, I want to do this. I just don't know how to adapt that template necessarily quickly. And also, it's quite an investment of time. And I'm a little worried about doing that sort of stuff on stream. Although, yeah, I might ask some more questions in Discords and stuff. No, do it live. Yes. I did install that plugin. Again, I gotta learn a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop pretty quickly now. But yeah, I gotta consider that. I do need to figure. So my goal is to get this part working fluidly, so that I understand the updates and I can track these things and make the changes, and all this is working fine. And when this is working fine, commit that, and then worry about deployment. Because once I get this working, once I get these features working, essentially I'm at the point where deploying a version of this and using it to track the new work is actually feasible. Because this is actually more akin to what I'm doing now, right? I'm not working on specific stories because I'm working on large pieces, and it's able to describe what I'm aiming for, so I can set out my requirements and stuff, and I could use this to actually build the application on. So if I do get a deployed version working, right, then yeah, that works. But again, I've got Kafka, I've got SQL Server, I've got console for the service, for the API gateway stuff, Redis, and all the services for the application. So the bare minimum required to run the application is one API, two APIs, consumers, three APIs, and a client. So it's actually running pretty much right now. Tickets and ticket consumers are the only two there that's not required. So there's 6 projects required to start. 7 actually, including the client, because the client's running inside of WebStorm right now. 7 projects minimum required to start. I might be able to create a repo with the current project structure. What, to demonstrate Aspire? But yeah, this is I'm making progress, definitely making progress. So the next challenge is the dates on JavaScript. Do I I might experiment with hooking GraphQL directly into the actual database, and then I'd have to turn on lazy loaded proxies so that the GraphQL could pull the data, because I don't think GraphQL will include. So I might have to do a little bit of research on hot chocolate there with Entity Framework, because resolve injection of a DB context. Yeah, we might have to do a little bit more work to get that working, but that will be the next thing. Oh, ads, joy. But I need to read out quickly because I've got work to start. I do not want to be late for work. If you're interested in this sort of stuff, if you're interested in doing more and you're not seeing ads, we're using GraphQL with EF. Yeah, it will, using it directly with Entity Framework will give me some benefits because the queries will adapt, right? Right now, I think I'm pulling too much data, whereas I'm not pulling a lot of data, but it's going to get worse. So I do want to move towards just using GraphQL with EF, which again, because it's a read context. We couldn't go one stream, could we? Because it's a read-only context. The credentials I give it could be read-only, and therefore it's protected. It's not going to have. I suppose that's one of the challenges we're going to talk about later. Like protected data, does that belong in that? I did try Aspire on one of my projects. Found that my local machine could not handle all the services I needed. I tried to do my whole game platform from front ends to back ends and the owner services. Yeah. Yeah, if Aspire can't run it on my local machine, then we'll have to give some review. But anyway. Okay, here we go and seeing. You know what? Fullbots needs something. Oh, I know raiding out of an app dev stream into a game dev stream doesn't kind of make sense, but it's unless you can spin up the whole infra, it's very limiting. And that again, that's the challenge, right? This infrastructure requires minimum 7 services running, not including the supporting services, which are SQL Server, Console, Kafka, RabbitMQ, Redis, and then that's before I even get to things like telemetry and stuff. And again, Papercut when I start to get email stuff in there for notifications. So the number of services grows. Like this machine's not terrible, right? It's a 5800X so it's a 16 core, I think this one is. 8 core with hyperthreading, so 16. No, 16 plus 128 gig of memory, but I'm at 60 gig now, right? Running everything I've got open. So I do not want to resource constrain the machine. So yeah. But let's go raid Fullbots, because I've literally got to start work in 2 minutes. I know it's raiding into a game stream, but Fullbots is awesome. He's building an awesome game, and I recommend checking him out. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe I'll have fixed this date issue. I'm going to continue trying to work on this tonight. But yeah. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for the support and the conversation. If you have any more questions, my Discord is there. I'm also active in other Discords, and I'm happy to talk about this stuff. And if there's videos that you think would be helpful to create, let me know. I will create content around that. So take care all. Thank you very much and have a great day.